We are in a journey through the life of Jesus each week. And today we're going to continue where Jesus was last week when Anthony spoke while he was in Jerusalem. Now, got to say a few things beforehand because I want to remind you of this, that the stories of Jesus are contained in 4 accounts of his life in the beginning of the Christian writings. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These 4 accounts of the life of Jesus. If you've read them, you know something that I want to make sure we know. That is that John is the most unique of the 4. John is the most unique, and here's why. And this is, if you haven't caught this yet, I've mentioned it before, but I want to kind of put it out there. That Matthew, Mark, and Luke spend more time telling the story of Jesus up in the region of Galilee, not only there, but a lot of it there. And John tells a lot of the story of Jesus and his interactions in the area of Judea. Judea is a region below the region of Galilee. Judea is where Jerusalem was, and John spends a lot of his time telling Jesus stories in Jerusalem and in Judea. Now, there are a couple stories that John tells up in Galilee, like the wedding, water into wine at the wedding in Cana, that's up in Galilee. His story of feeding the 5,000, those are in John 2 and John 6. Those happen in Galilee, but most of John's stories are Jesus in Judea. And then in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, a lot of their stories are Jesus up in Galilee. Now, they tell some stories of Jesus in Jerusalem, but they spend a lot of their focus in Galilee. So that's why those first 3 books kind of feel different than John. Same story, but just different eras and different, and there's a few reasons for that we won't get into all of those right now, all the reasons why you have that nuance there. But it's there. So today we're back in John. We've been in John for the last few weeks for a bit. Jesus keeps coming down to Jerusalem for festival season because since he's a boy with his family, as a man, as a religious man, he would follow the festivals that they practiced, especially the major 3, Passover, Pentecost, and what we call today Sukkot, or the Festival of Shelters. And Jesus would travel down to the city, to Jerusalem, for these festivals regularly. And as we saw last week when Anthony spoke, there's a whole lot of chapters where Jesus is doing cool stuff, but everyone keeps challenging him. The religious leaders don't like him there because he doesn't fit into their mold. He doesn't play their game. This is not how we do God. We do God this way, and this guy's an outsider doing it differently, and that can't be right, so we can't. So they fought him every turn. And so Anthony spent a lot of time last week showing us multiple chapters of dialogue where Jesus has to be confronted by these people and answer and defend himself in Jerusalem. Because now he's on their turf. Now people from Galilee, like him, are down in Jerusalem for festivals, and they've seen his miracles. And they're excited to, and the word has spread to the folks in Jerusalem who haven't seen as many miracles. And the religious leaders in Galilee who don't like him have spread the word to the religious leaders in Jerusalem, and they don't like him. So there's all this hot pot of tension. And Jesus has to defend himself, and Anthony did a great job last week of navigating a bunch of tough scriptures to show us how Jesus almost got killed a few times in there answering their accusations. But it wasn't time for him to die yet. Well, what he did is he skipped 2 stories that we have not told in these festival visits. One of them we'll look at today, and one we'll look at next week before we pivot back to Galilee. Okay? All right, so let's jump into John chapter 8 and verse 1. Jesus returned to the Mount of Olives. I'm going to stop right there for a minute and talk about this. Jesus is in Jerusalem for festivals, but Jesus very seldom stayed in Jerusalem when he was there. He usually stayed out of town. You'll see it over and over again when he comes to Jerusalem. Even in the week he dies, he doesn't stay in Jerusalem most of that week. He comes and leaves. There's towns around Jerusalem that Jesus would stay in because he had friends there. We've not met some of Jesus' close friends that lived nearby. We're going to meet them down the road a little ways. And he would stay at their houses. Now, why is that? I think it's interesting because we understand Jerusalem is a major attraction and it's packed full of people during these festivals. Let me speak from personal testimony this week. We were just in Mackinac, up in northern Michigan at the peninsulas there where they meet. And in that area, it's a tourist area. And during the summertime, it's really, really, really packed because the kids are off school. People take their vacations and they go there. We've been there many times. Usually most of our trips there have been during the summer when it's peak season in that area. Everything's packed. Now this year we went, because our kids have graduated, we went later, still tourist season. It wasn't shut down until the end of October up there. But because people are back in school and stuff, the tourist season was diminished, and so it was a lot nicer to go up there during September than July and August, I'll tell you that. A lot more breathing room. But the people who live there would tell you that after October, when the tourist season's over, it's a whole different world up there. But during the tourist season, guess what happens? It's crowded, prices go up, lodging's more expensive, meals are more expensive, right? Because supply and demand, am I right? And Jerusalem is the same way. People who lived in Jerusalem are used to most of the year business as usual. But if you lived in Jerusalem and it was time for Passover, Pentecost, or shelters, get ready. Here they come. And so now the prices go up, the lodging goes up, everything goes up. It's a hopping time for a season. Even during the day between Pentecost and Passover, or Passover to Pentecost, busy season. So Jesus, when he would come into town, he usually didn't stay in the crowded city. He would go out to his friend's house and stay in the nearby areas of Bethany or the Mount of Olives or places like that. And so in the story today, Jesus has gone back that night from the city to the Mount of Olives, but early the next morning, he was back again at the temple, early. It says a crowd soon gathered, and he sat down and taught them. Now, who is this crowd? It could be people from Galilee who heard him do miracles and teach up there, but now they want to have him do it in the temple because that's cool there. It's the place. Or maybe it's new people who've never heard him before who live in Jerusalem who want to get a glimpse. But they're packing around. Now remember, when it says he's in the temple is not always just the temple proper. There's the temple that Solomon built that was torn down, that was rebuilt. But now you have the greater temple complex. They called it Herod's temple. He built it much bigger. He added big courtyards and colonnades and rooms and covered shelters and open spaces so that many more tens and thousands of people could pack into it. Well over 100,000 total. And so Jesus and people like him could gather with a group and have services or meetings in there. And Jesus is in the temple complex. People are gathered around because it's Jesus, and they want to hear what he has to say, and he starts to teach them. But you know who does not like that? Well, you saw last week with Anthony. The people who didn't like that are the religious people, who he's stealing their show. And he's not doing it their way. It can't be right if it's not our way. My way is the only right way. I mean, that's how we all feel, right? So they did not like this, and so they have a plan to cause a disruption. And it's a plan that I believe was set in motion before the morning. Let's read about it. Verse 3. As he was speaking, the teachers of religious law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery. Okay, let me just read that again. They didn't bring a woman who was an adulterer. They brought a woman who was caught in the act of adultery. That's horrifying. I mean, if you're committing adultery, you probably don't want to be caught. You probably don't want to be outed 2 weeks later. You probably don't want to be on a jumbotron at a Coldplay concert, up in, right? Or whatever. But, here's the thing. You sure don't want to be caught in the act. And they did. They caught her, and they have dragged her in front of the crowd. It says they put her in front of the crowd. Now, as you read the story and as you read some of the verbiage later, I think we need to understand some things that you don't see when you see this depicted on television. And there's some good depictions of this done through some of our favorite shows about Jesus. But sometimes you get the impression that she's down on the ground, crumbled and kind of hiding in shame. And sometimes you also get the impression that there's only Jesus and her at points there and no one else is around. There's a crowd of people who were listening to a message by Jesus, and I don't think she's standing up. We're going to see it later. She's standing up. They're not letting her hide. She's being judged, man. She's exposed. She's standing there in front of a crowd of people with these religious men bringing her, saying she's been caught in the act of adultery. Put in front of the whole thing. Verse 4, "Teacher," they said to Jesus. This is the religious leaders. "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. The law of Moses says to stone her. What do you say?" Stone her means kill her. Take a stone and stone her. "What do you say, Jesus?" "Teacher." This is a whole disruption on purpose. Now, before we talk about why they're doing it and all the nuances of it, I want to take a pause right here, and I want to answer a question that someone might be wondering in this room or online. The law says to kill her? I hate to say it, but yeah. So let's just look at that together. Right? Before we do, let me just say a few things. Remember that the law of Moses, that's what they're referring to, we call it the Pentateuch. It's the first 5 books of what we call the Old Testament, or we might call the Hebrew Scriptures, the scriptures that the Jews have, and to this day embraces the entirety of their Bible, of their beliefs. But even the Hebrew Scriptures, no one debated that the first 5 books were the most weighty, the law of Moses. Because there were people within Judaism who didn't even give full weight to the other writings. They felt like they were just good extra commentaries, but the scripture was the law of Moses. And others just said, no, all these other writings are also the law. It was a debate like it is today about what's in and what's out. But the law of Moses was the king. This was their scripture. And so where is this law? Well, remember that the Israelites, 1,500 years before Jesus arrived, they were in slavery in Egypt. They had been slaves for hundreds of years. And while they were enslaved, they multiplied. Apparently, they had nothing else to do but have more kids. And they worked hard, so they got very strong. And by the time that Moses led them free, they were a strong, large people. But here's the problem. They've never had to govern themselves before. Right? Think about it. When they're slaves, you don't have laws. You don't operate a government. Slaves just do what they're told. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Don't beat me, please. Now they're free. And Moses is bringing them from Egypt through the wilderness to the promised land where their ancestors several hundred years earlier, their patriarchs, once wandered, and God told them this was your future. They are coming to the promised land as people who've never had to govern themselves before. And so they're given laws. Moses goes into the mountain, comes down and says, here's the laws that God is giving you to govern your nation. And the laws they were given were much like the laws of every other nation then and since. Laws like moral laws, right? We have moral laws today, right? There's moral laws. There's civil laws, what you can and cannot do, and how you gotta behave with other people's stuff, and all that kinds of things. There was health laws. There was dietary policies. There was even quarantine policies, believe it or not. They're like, hey, if you have disease control, we got this going on. Here's what you have to do, and here's what you got to check out before we let you back into the rest of the public. I mean, there was policies to keep people safe. There was policies to protect people's property. There was every kind of policy you could find in the law all throughout it. They had laws that were judicial. How we judge certain things that happen and what consequences are for certain crimes. But of course, the most famous of the laws were the ones that Moses first came down from the mountain with. When he got the 10 commandments, we called them the top 10, right? Remember those? Ones like don't kill. That's a good policy, don't kill. Don't steal, don't, bear false testimony against other people. But you know what was one of those 10 commandments? Exodus chapter 20, verse 14, you must not commit adultery. I don't think anyone would argue that that's a good law. No, no one here is probably going to raise your hand and say, I'm an advocate for adultery. If you would, we need to talk to you and your spouse about some things. But I think we all agree that's a no-no, big time. But the law went further, and in Deuteronomy explained some consequences that are kind of uncomfortable to read. I should just skip them, but I'm going to go there because I'm weird, and I like to make myself uncomfortable. So in Deuteronomy 22:22, here was the further judicial teaching. It says, if a man is discovered committing adultery, both he and the woman must die. In this way, you will purge Israel of such evil. Now, hold on now. It depends on where you are in your faith journey and how this passage strikes you. These are the ones we don't read these out loud because either way, it's uncomfortable. If you're something or saying, I don't know, I mean, that seems kind of harsh. I'm a barbaric. Is this in the Bible or whatever? Remember, the law and what Jesus came to accomplish. Don't miss the point of the message of Jesus because we're stuck in the laws of Israel, first of all. But second of all, people struggle. They struggle with, that seems harsh. Put them to death. And then there are others amongst us, depending on your personality type, that your big shtick is to defend the Bible. I must defend the Bible because it makes you secure, and I'm afraid someone's going to make it look bad. And so it's like, we just yelled. Don't ever shake that confidence because, and that's good. It can be unhealthy. It can make us angry with people that we don't need to be angry with and toxic in how we present our faith. But it's understandable that we get insecure. And so we just want someone to get up and say, God says it, this is how it is. And others are like, I don't know how to deal with that. And so I know I can't win with anybody by bringing a verse like this up, right? It's like a tough verse. Because what I'm going to say, this is why we dodge these verses, because what I'm going to say is going to leave everyone unsatisfied. Like, the ones who are like, you can't just say that's okay. Because in Western culture, listen, I don't know what you believe. I'm just going to tell you right now. If our country today said we're going to vote in Cedar Lake to pass a law in Lake County, and we all get a vote, that from now on, if someone commits adultery in our community, we kill them. I'm not voting for it. I'm just going to tell you. Now, you can say, well, you're a bad Christian. That's okay. You can call me a bad Christian. I'm not going to do it. You might. And maybe you never talk to me again because I don't have, but I wouldn't vote for that. It's uncomfortable. That's okay, by the way. For those of us who get really defensive, let me just say this to us all. It's okay to say there are parts of the scripture that are uncomfortable. It's okay to acknowledge that there's things in the Bible that are difficult. Doesn't mean I'm right. Right? Doesn't mean I'm more than God. It's okay for you to say, I don't like that part. I think our inability to do that makes it so defensive that we'd rather tell people, get out of my presence instead of questioning anything. And that's why we don't make a difference with people who need to hear hard things and wrestle them down. So it's hard. Now let me just give you an unsatisfactory answer about this text. First thing I'll say is this. I love that it says you will purge Israel of such evil. That word evil is very important here because it differentiates sin and evil. Sin, we could argue, is doing something that's wrong, blatantly. If you do something wrong, it's sin. Evil could be defined in a simplistic way as doing something wrong that harms other people or harms somebody else. Now, the zealots can say, well, every sin harms somebody. Yes, but the difference is doing something that you know is likely to harm somebody else, but you don't care because you want to do it. Evil. And notice that some of the commands in the top 10 have capital offenses are evil like that. They harm other people. And before we get so hung up on that, just remember, it's not that long ago that civilized cultures have had laws like this forever. In fact, in our country today, thou shalt not kill can be punishable by death. We still have capital punishment in our country. Some people hate it. Some people think it's wonderful. Some people want to abolish the death penalty. Others want to build electric bleachers for the offenders. I don't know. But we still have laws for capital punishment, right? And not just for killing people. There are laws in our country to this day, but not that long ago. People got killed for stealing. They hang you up in the public square. You get caught stealing someone's horse in the field, they'll take you over a tree and hang you because stealing is capital offense. That's our own history not that long ago. Most of the world has had laws about certain things, and in this time, commit adultery, he says, let's kill them both. Now, that seems crazy to us today, but it's not that unusual in the greater scope of the world, especially 3,500 years ago. Because it is an evil, because someone's cheating on somebody. By the way, again, I don't think anyone here is going to advocate cheating or tell your spouse, feel free. That's terrible. It wrecks families, it wrecks homes, right? Some of the biggest pain some of you ever felt in your life was because of adultery. Some of the biggest regrets some of us have ever had is because of adultery. And so there were strict laws. Well, anyhow, satisfied or not, that's the law. I'm just telling it to you. It's okay to live in that tension. It's okay to live in that tension, right? It's good. Now, the problem is Jesus is sitting here trying to teach a room full of people at the temple festival, and these guys bring this woman in and say, she was caught in the act of adultery. What are you going to do about it? The law says to stone her. What do you say? Now, why are they doing this to him? Well, here's why. Verse number 6, it says they were trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. And this is so crucial to understand. And this answers this takes the pressure off of me. Because if I'm struggling with the whole stone them to death in the modern Western 2025 year, they were too. There's not a lot of historical records much past Deuteronomy of people getting stoned for adultery. Okay? Don't get ahead of me now. I'm going there, girls. Don't get ahead of me. Don't steal my thunder. My goodness, I'm the one preaching. I'm just kidding. We're gonna get there. So here's the story. Man, it's coming. Okay, anyhow, here's the thing. They're trying to trap Jesus. Here's the trap. And if you don't miss the trap, you'll miss the whole point. The trap is this. If Jesus says, nah, let's not do that. Let's not stone her. Let's not kill her. then they're going to say, wait a minute, but the scriptures say it. You don't stand by the scriptures. You don't believe the scriptures. How dare you? In today's terms, we say, you don't believe the Bible. You don't accept, that's erase the whole Bible. If Jesus says that, in those terms, he's basically saying, let's not obey the law of Moses. And they're going to say, don't follow this man. Don't listen to him. He's not fit to teach. He claims to be from God. He's obviously not. He doesn't believe the scriptures. Don't follow him. Don't trust him. He's not a prophet. It's a trap. But if he says, okay, let's kill her, he'd be barbaric, because even by that point, 2,000 years ago, it's not just me. 2,000 years ago, no one's in the mood to just go stone some woman for being caught in adultery. So if Jesus said, let's kill her, he looks like a monster. I don't think the people who brought her there intended to have her stoned. They were trying to make Jesus look bad if he says stone her, because they knew it would look bad. Or make Jesus look bad by saying, let's not obey the Bible. Problem. I don't think they wanted to, not that people were against killing, okay? Like, I understand that people killed a lot in those days, stoned and otherwise, Paul the apostle, others. But usually, those weren't for these reasons. They're usually for religious reasons or political reasons. Happens today. We see it recently in our own country, people getting killed for their beliefs and their words. And in those days, a lot of the Jesus followers were killed because of their doctrine or their beliefs, right? But not usually for this kind of thing. So this would be an unpopular execution. And if Jesus says kill her, he looks like a monster and loses the crowd. If he says don't kill her, he looks like he doesn't really believe the scripture, so you can't trust him. It's a trap. And these guys probably didn't expect her to be killed. They didn't care about her at all. They were willing to drag her and humiliate her and shame her, because their goal was not her concern. Their goal was to make Jesus look bad. And if I can tear him down, she's a price I'm willing to pay. Now, to the point I was getting to, no, you're good. Where's the guy? The scripture in Deuteronomy says if a man's caught in adultery, the man and the woman must be put to death. The man is suspiciously missing in this story. Like, why was he not dragged out in front of Jesus too? Why just her? Makes you wonder. Was he strong enough to fight to get away from them? And he abandoned her? He abandoned her like to her own fate without her? That's what a guy would do who would cheat on his wife, by the way. He'd probably abandon you too, just for the record. But anyhow, so did he abandon her and they only captured her? Or did they know him? Was he one of them? Is that why they knew how to catch her in the very act of adultery? I don't know. But he's missing. And I'll tell you this right now, she's the more sympathetic one to drag. Because some people might say, kill that jerk of a guy who cheated on his wife. But they might feel bad for a woman who's being humiliated. If they want to have sympathy for her so Jesus looks bad to kill her, she's the right one to have there. If they want to make Jesus look bad for not killing her because he doesn't obey the Bible, isn't that how culture works today? I know a lot of Christians running around, religious people, thanks to social media, saying, I'm going to call out this preacher or that church or this ministry or that influencer because they don't believe it. They don't believe this Bible verse. I have a verse. And they don't follow my teachings of these verses, so you shouldn't follow them. And we are always condemning people because we can find a verse and tear them down because we don't like them. And when I see Christians do that all the time, I see it all the time. Some of us get caught up in that junk. And I say this a lot because I want some of us to stop getting sucked into the junk of angry religious people, trolling other religious people because they don't like what they have to say, and so I'm going to use a verse to call them a heretic or whatever else. I want to say you're doing the same thing the Pharisees did to Jesus in those days. He just went about doing good, and they went about trying to tear down those who they could find a verse against. And if I want to be in one category or the other, I want to be out doing some good like Jesus, who I'm supposed to follow, and less time trying to tear people down who I think are not getting it as right as I am. But boy, is this a bad culture even today. So Jesus is being put to the test. They're trying to trap him into saying something they could use against him. But look what Jesus does. But Jesus stooped down and he wrote in the dust with his finger. He's probably like, oh, goodness gracious. I had a good teaching going on. These guys show up with this woman, and now no one's going to remember a single thing I said today. All they're going to remember is this whole circus. Right? He just ignored it. He's writing in the dust. And this frustrates them. The next verse tells us, it says, they kept demanding an answer. Hey, answer us, answer us. So he stood up again and said, all right, let's do it. Let's obey the Bible. All right, but let the one who has never sinned throw the first stone. He says, guys, we're going to do it. We're going to obey the scripture. Whichever of you has never sinned gets to throw the first stone. Deal? And then it says in the next part, then he stooped down again and wrote in the dust. Guys, whoever's without sin, you throw that first stone. You're right, let's do it. Deuteronomy, throw the first stone, sinless one, go for it. And he stoops down and he starts to write. And they're all standing there. What's he writing? This is one of the mysteries of God. Some of you are like, when I get to heaven someday, I want to ask God about the moment of creation or this or that. You know what I want to ask him? What was he writing? This is my big itchy question. What was he writing in the dust? I'd love to know. I'm picturing, he's like, these people are giving me a headache. OMD, oh my dad. Oh. I can't even, on a scale of 1 to even, I just can't. And I don't know what he's got going on. But I wonder if maybe what he's doing is he's writing down, he just said, whichever was without sin throws the first stone. What if he's writing down their sins? Oh, yeah, that one here, he's committed adultery before. That one still's committing adultery, and Jebediah's got a dirty mind. And this guy's a terrible husband and an angry father. Ask his kids about him, and he's writing stuff down. I don't know what's happening. It says when the accusers heard this, they slipped away one by one, beginning with the oldest, until only Jesus was left in the middle of the crowd with a woman. So here's the thing. I don't know why the oldest leaves first. You could argue that it's the wisdom of age. You know, we're oftentimes more zealous when we're young and more wise when we're older. Not always. There are wise young people and zealous old people. But maybe the older person was mature enough to say, okay, we got nothing now. He turned the tables on us and said, he didn't say disobey the law, but he also told us that we got to start it if we're without sin, and I'm not without sin. Jesus just clocked our T. I mean, I'm telling you, we're stuck now. So they're just, I don't know, maybe he was writing down from the oldest to the youngest what they've done wrong. They're like, that would be me, I'm out of here. I don't know. But they all start leaving. Eventually the last people are like, I'm not staying. So then there's no one left except the woman, which by the way, they didn't take her with them. They're just like, we've used her. She's no good to us anymore. And now the woman's standing there with Jesus. And by the way, can we think about what the woman feels like right now? The woman has to have a sense of total relief and yet total terror. It's like, I feel so much better. And yet at the same time, overwhelmingly depressed. Because here she is. Like the men who brought her there, she had to hate them for that. Bringing her and not the guy she was with. I mean, it didn't happen that morning probably. It was early in the morning this whole story took place. It's probably a night before as a plan. She's been in their clutches for how long? Dragged and shamed. She's probably glad they're gone. If she wondered if they would be willing to kill her for that defense, that's off the table now. That feels good. So in a lot of ways, she's relieved, but in other ways, she's like, oh, good. Oh, there's still a crowd of people staring at her. All the people who just heard that she was caught in the act of adultery are still staring at her. They didn't leave. What's she supposed to do? Hi. What do you do? And Jesus is busy still doodling on the ground like, hey, buddy. It's a very awkward moment for a woman who's been humiliated and shamed over her sin. I mean, she's either cheating on her husband with another man and got caught, or she was cheating with another man's wife and got caught. No one in the crowd is sitting there saying, you go, girl. Some of the women are like, she better not be with my husband. It wasn't you, was it, Ralph? I don't know. So, I mean, she's just standing there like, my accusers are gone, but now what? It says, then Jesus stood up again. He stood up again, and he said to the woman, where are your accusers? I love this part. He does the John Travolta from Pulp Fiction here. He's like, where? I don't see them anywhere. Where are your accusers? What's going on here? Didn't even one of them condemn you? No, Lord, she said. She calls him Lord, by the way. No, Lord, she said. He says to her, I want to know, where's those people who wanted you dead? Or wanted you judged? Or wanted you condemned? Where are they? No one? Not one? No. No, Lord. Look what Jesus says next, verse 11. And Jesus said, neither do I. Now he says more than that. We'll get to that. Hang with me. Jesus says, neither do I. That part's important. Here's why. Because if you think about it, he was the one person who had the right to condemn her. Remember what he said to the men? What does Jesus say to the guys? Let the one who is without sin throw the first stone. And Jesus was without sin. Those men may not have believed he was. They didn't believe in him. But Jesus was without sin. By Jesus' own declaration, he had the right, and they would have argued the mandate to keep the law of Moses. And he had the right to condemn her because he was without sin. And yet the one person who could have looked at her and says, neither do I. Now, if they were in the room still, they might have said, there he is, not following the law. But they've all left. Those fools have left. So Jesus is like, listen, neither do I condemn you. He said, why did he not condemn that? I mean, someone should condemn that. People need to know. That's wrong. I think she knew. I think she knew before she was caught that it was wrong. I don't think it was like a revelation. I think she's pretty much been dragged over it. Can we agree to that? Jesus, neither do I condemn you. And it reminds me of one of my favorite verses. We all know John 3:16. John 3:16 is the famous verse, but I love John 3:17. It says, for God sent his son into the world not to judge the world or not to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. That was why God sent Jesus. And Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. I know that I can hear the voices in my past who say, well, Jesus will come back someday to judge the world. Yes. But the first time he was clear, he did not. He came to save it. And by the way, if you want to know which pattern of Jesus you're supposed to follow, I'm supposed to follow, it's that pattern. It's that pattern. That's the one. Because we're following the footsteps of Jesus who came in this world to save it and rescue and redeem and not to judge and condemn. And Jesus says to her, who condemns you? Nobody, sure. And he says to her in verse 11, Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. And then he adds this, go and sin no more. And I love that. He says to her now, you're not condemned. And I think this is the heart of Jesus, looking at somebody who has just been so humiliated. And he's talking to her and he's just absolved her. I think when the crowd, can I step back and say this? I think when the crowd, if they were judging her, even once those guys had left, when they heard Jesus, the one they came to hear teach, tell her he does not condemn her, I think it kind of helped her with everybody else as well. He's taking care of all of the problem. She is as relieved. I mean, I'm sure she doesn't want to be there still, but she is as free as she's free to go. She's as free as she's ever been. But Jesus adds this, go and sin no more. And I think that's how he said it. He didn't say it in the way that I picture some religious people. I grew up around religious people who could never even admit that Jesus didn't condemn her without having to say, he also said, go and sin no more. I agree. We're going to talk about that. But I don't think he was like, you listen to me, you dumb woman. I had a good sermon going on, and you and your stupid sin got me and messed up, and I lost the whole crowd because of you, and I rescued you. Look at me. You owe me. Big boy Jesus here. Don't you dare do this again or I'll get you good. That's not what I think he's saying here. I think what he's saying is this, girl, that was rough, wasn't it? That was terrible. You did something wrong and you paid in ways that many people don't ever have to pay like that. Public humiliation. I'm so sorry. I don't condemn you. Hear me. I don't condemn you. Hey, go and sin no more. Come on now. Do better. You know what it reminds me of? A few weeks ago when Debbie spoke from John 5, where Jesus told the man, go and sin no more unless something worse happens to you. Remember that? I think he's saying to her, listen, next time, if you go out and do this again, I might not be there when they're dragging you. It could get a whole lot worse. Come on now, this you know that was wrong and it went bad. Do me a favor, I love you. You're not condemned, but let's do better. That's the gospel. It's both sides. It's the grace of neither do I condemn you, and it's the grace of saying, I want better for your life than to live that way. And we have to walk in that tension. And many of us can kind of fall one way or the other. And yet Jesus embodied it all, full of grace and truth. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And I want to leave us with that thought today. Because for all of us in the room, we have to walk in those same two tensions. So let me give you two statements and we'll be done with my message. The first statement is this: no matter what you do, God still loves you. That's the gospel. Gospel means good news. That's the good news. If we don't have that good news, we're in trouble, we're scared. We got to worry. And some of us don't like that good news. We hope it for ourselves, but we think we're good enough to where we don't need much, so we don't like that statement because we're afraid to let other people feel loved who we don't want to feel okay. But I want to make it very clear, the message of Jesus is this: no matter what you do, God still loves you. That's the whole gospel. That's the whole point of everything we're talking about, period. Let me give you a second statement that also is equally true. What you do matters. What you do matters. What you do, it matters because it affects your life. What you do matters because it affects the people's lives around you. It affects others. What you do matters. But no matter what you do, God still loves you. But what you do matters. But no matter what you do, God still loves you. But what you do matters. But no matter what you do, God still loves you. That's the message. That's the gospel embodied beautifully in this text and every other. That Jesus calls us to believe and rest in the security that we're just loved, and it's not because we earned it. It's grace. But also to have that rest become that trust in his love, unconditional love, becomes a firm foundation that we can build our confidence upon. So we can build a better house on top of that foundation. So we can walk a surer path on those sturdy legs. What you do matters. And also, no matter what you do, God still loves you. Can I say, we're going to take communion in a minute. Communion illustrates both of those things so well. Communion is when Jesus sat there in the upper room the night he was arrested, about to be killed. He sat with his disciples and he said, guys, we're fast forwarding the story right now to the future from today's story. Jesus is in his last night before he's arrested, the night he's arrested, and he says, guys, I'm going to start something new. Take this bread and remember my body that's given for you, that's broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. This is my blood that's shed for you. It's a new covenant I'm making with you through my blood. You know what he's saying? You know what communion is telling us? It's telling us that what you do matters. Think about that. Think about that with me. Communion is telling us that what we do matters so much that Jesus had to die. Because it matters. What we do matters so much that Jesus went to the cross because our sin condemned us and brought us far from God. Let's never downplay that what we do matters. And the cross and the communion we take reminds us of that. It also reminds us that no matter what we do, God still loves us. Both statements are exemplified when we take the bread and the juice. What I did matters so much that someone died for my sins. He loves me so much no matter what, that he died for my sins. It's the whole gospel. It's the whole message. And I hope today, as we take it, we'll be mindful of it. Because I don't know, following Jesus ought to look an awful lot like saying I believe him enough to be transformed by his grace, to be transformed by his grace. It matters what I do, and no matter what I do, God loves me. Let's pray.